I'm going to pretend it's for a specific good or service like tractors, or actually a good idea would be let's say let's just say apples.
Yep.
So that's the demand in the UK for apples, and that's the
y-
supply in the UK of apples.
Yep.
And one more curve. We've got a world supply curve of apples. So this is the supply of apples around the world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so in micro in theme one, um, demand is the number of goods and services. So in this case, the number of apples that people are willing and able to buy at each price point, and supply
Yeah.
is the number of goods and services that firms are willing and able to sell at each price point. So the first thing is, why is there a random supply world curve that's perfectly elastic? Um, do you know why that is?
Um, is it because even if there's like a change in price,
Yeah,
the quantity like demanded, the percent like proportionate to that is not going to change as much. So it's like it's not going to change at all.
you're right. Something's not going to change. So, well, PS is, we don't need to overcomplicate it for macro, but PS is the percentage change in supply over the percentage change in price. If something's perfectly elastic, it basically means the price can never change. Yeah, because it's going
Okay.
to always be something over zero, which is why it's infinite.
Okay.
Yeah, so the price can never change. And the reason for that is because all firms around the world are price takers. If you think about perfect competition, well, apples around the world is an example of perfect competition. How can someone say that I've got apples that are £10 an apple? It's not possible because there's infinite people selling apples. Each individual seller has no control over the price.
That makes sense.
Cool. Next thing is, I mentioned that suppliers who's willing and able to sell apples at different prices. Until this quantity, Q1, who's cheaper? Would you rather buy from a UK producer, a UK farmer who's selling apples, or a someone around the world who's selling apples? Just until
They
that.
both they both cost the same.
But how about in the lead up to that point? Who's cheaper until that point, from zero to Q1?
Oh, the world supply.
No. Which supply curve is lower? This one or this one?
But I thought that the world supply it's the 2 point would be the world supply because it's constant, but then the UK it increases. So it's like
After you're no, you're right. After Q1, you're right, but until Q1. So for a limited quantity, who's cheaper?
then UK.
Yeah, because if I just want to buy a handful of apples, someone's going to get lucky and find them at this price. So why would they go and pay this price? Do you agree?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's the idea behind until Q1. So imagine with apples, there's going to be a handful of people around the UK. They're just giving their apples away for free, or they're just giving their apples away super cheap. There's going to be some local guys who are selling apples really cheap. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
On a larger scale, of course, what you said is true. What's cheaper, this or this?
The world supply.
Exactly. So you're completely right. World supply is cheaper than domestic supply, but until Q1, domestic supply is cheaper. Until Q2 and onwards, the world supply is cheaper, but after Q2, demand dies down, so no one needs apples anymore, right?
Yeah.
Okay, call that O, and I want you to remember to say that. With a tariff removal or a tariff imposition, I want you to say four things in your paragraph. One, two, three, four, and you'll get all the marks. One, the old, I want you to say four things when you add a tariff or remove a tariff. I want you to say the old amount that the UK was producing Actually, let me say the word is output. It just sounds a bit nicer. The old UK output, the new UK output, or domestic output, depending on which country you're talking about, the old imports, and the new imports. If you say these four things, then you have enough to talk about. And then for your
Okay.
eval, the best one is always going to be tax revenue, either being gained or lost.
Okay.
So far, it's before any change. So right now, when there's not been a tariff added, the quantity of UK output is from 0 to,
Q1.
yes. And currently, the number of imports are from,
Q1 to Q2?
yes, well done. So now you understand the basics. The rest is very easy. All that happens is a tariff would shift S world up, and a removal of a tariff would shift S world down. So I'm going to label that S world plus tariff. And then I still have 0 as the starting point, and I now have this as my new version of Q1, which will be called Q3. Other people may use different names for that. And my new version of Q2, which is going to be Q4. And now in my paragraph, I start talking about what's happened to my UK output and what's happened to my imports. So now, remember how I said until Q1, it's cheaper to buy locally?
Yep.
Until which point now is it cheaper to buy locally?
Q3.
Perfect. So the new UK output would be from O2.
Q3.
Exactly. And we can emphasize that that's actually gone up. So surely that's a good thing. So there's more to talk about and more to discuss. There might be job creation, there might be more economic growth, and so on. Imports are now Q3 to Q4
Mhm.
because that's the bit where imports are cheaper. And after that, demand is not high enough. People are not valuing apples enough that we either want to buy them locally or um, foreign. So the number of imports has gone down, which is also going to be, on average, a good thing because X minus M's gone up. So AD is going to shift to the right.
Yeah.
Um, that's your P1, that's your P2. And because of the tariff, there's now going to be a tax on every import. So if Q3 to Q4 is the quantity of imports and P1 to P2 is the change in price of imports, then that rectangle is going to be the change in price times the change in quantity. Sorry, the change in price times the quantity, which is a tax revenue.
Makes sense.
And now you have plenty to write about. One thing I would always do whenever you add a tariff is emphasize that it's very easy to get confused or caught up in micro points. In terms of macro points, the best thing to say when you add a tariff is that as a result, SRAS will shift to the right or left.
Right.
So, sorry, just think about it carefully. AD would probably shift right, but SRAS,
Oh,
um,
no, no. Supply will decrease
why is that?
because since it's a tax imposed on the goods and services,
Hmm,
it'll add to cost of production and then the supply will have to decrease.
exactly. Cost of production have gone up because the price of imports have gone up. So anybody in a bakery making apple crumbles, apple turnovers, any of that stuff, and you think about this now on a wider scale, I use apples as one example. Costs of raw materials and costs of semi-finished goods are all going to go up. So all the companies here selling finished products and services, their costs have gone up in making that good or service.
Yep.
The AD effect is uncertain. The reason being that, yeah, cool, imports have gone down, so AD should go up. But remember, what happens when we impose, if I impose a tariff on you, what are you most likely to do in return?
Impose a tariff back.
Yeah, and that's called retaliation. And that means I don't know if my imports will go up by more or my imports will go down by that much, or my exports will also go down by
Or I
that much.
could or I could just import from another country who doesn't have tariffs on
Exactly. And
me.
it depends on the whole setup. So whether it's a random trade agreement, a random protectionism measure, or a massive like customs union or something.
Okay.
Cool. We're just going to do one more thing, but quite fast, which is a tariff removal diagram. Whenever you're talking about free trade or globalization, you can show with the process of globalization, tariffs are going to be removed. So, um, do you want to just talk me through it? I'm drawing some of it, but just tell me what to draw.
So y- so there's the supply curve, like
Yep.
the world supply.
How does that look?
So the world supply is horizontal.
Yep. Before that, I'll just draw the domestic supply.
Domestic supply is slanted, yeah. And then world supply.
Perfect. And then I'll draw that quite high to start with. The reason being, we're starting with a
Because
tariff and we're showing, yeah, go on.
because the world supply minus the tariff would be lower.
Exactly. Perfect. So we go from P1 to P2 and just talk me through the quantities. What I find helps if you're confused or stuck, just draw from here and then do the rest afterwards. So this is going to be zero.
This is
And
P1.
you don't have to put the zero, but I find it's really, really helpful to put the zero because it helps explain stuff better. Okay, now talk me through it.
So P1 and then Q1
Yep,
and then Q2 and
perfect.
then the second world supply.
Cool. Just before you do that, remind me what are the four things I should try to talk about?
The old UK output, new UK output,
Good.
um, old imports and new imports, and then
Perfect.
tax revenue.
Well done. Okay, perfect. Um, and what is that? So you've got P2, Q3, Q4. And what is the old UK imports? Sorry, the old UK output.
Q1,
Yep, 0 to Q1. Good. What is the new UK output?
um, 0 to Q3.
Well done. Because after that point is when it gets cheaper to import.
Yep.
Cool. And the old imports?
Q1 to Q2,
Good.
and then Q3 to Q4.
Okay, perfect. And then you've got the tax revenue, which has been lost. And then you can say all your common sense points and your year 12 points about tax revenue, why it's so important. That could have been
Mm-hmm.
used. That means the budget deficit's going to get worse. That means living standards get worse depending on where the spending cuts are going to happen and all that kind of stuff.
Opportunity cost for like other things, yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And the final point is that we don't know exactly how it's going to affect AD. You'd like to think that AD is going to go down because imports have increased, but we really don't know because whilst we might be importing more from another country, with a trade agreement, they're also going to be importing more from us. That's how trade agreements work typically.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're guaranteed, or not guaranteed, but we're way more likely to be sure that SRAS is going to shift which way?
To the right.
Exactly. So if you want to develop even further, talk about SRAS shifting. Right. And then in your eval, you can talk about the tax revenue as a downside, and then you've got this as your like positive effects. Okay.
Yep,
And now anytime you need to talk about trade, protectionism, globalization, any of that stuff, you can use tariffs being added or removed. And it's well, a really like A-star paragraph, but it's also quite easy once you get the hang of it.
that makes sense.
Perfect.